If we set the bar a little bit lower and we get creative with our model designs, maybe use some cheaper materials, we might be able to get more people making their own miniatures. This is Alginate. You usually use it for casting body parts.
This miniature quest starts with mold making, which sounds super backwards. You gotta know how to make a mold in order to design a miniature. Miniature making is all about limitations.
We kind of want to paint this into the details to make sure that we don't get any bubbles, especially like in the nose and the eye.
When I first made this miniature years ago, I didn't use Alginate, I used Silicone, and it cost me a small fortune. I think really Alginate would have been a much wiser place to start.
Now we're going to mix up more before that cures, because Alginate doesn't stick to itself.
Not enough. That's the eye there, I didn't pour enough. So
I'm just going to fill the corners with junk, I think. Get the surface to rise up. That's pretty good. We'll see if that works.
Alginate kind of allows you to take these risks because the investment of money and time is so low. It's also great to learn with because you can make molds and molds and molds all day long.
Easy. I reckon this is going to be a winner.
To fill our mold, I'm using dental plaster. It's kind of like plaster of Paris, but it feels much tougher. It's a little bit more expensive than plaster of Paris, but it also seems to kind of work with the Alginate a little bit better. It seems to release away from the mold better, making it so you can get more casts, I think. That's from my experimentation. And then I kept making more molds, using candidates of miniatures that I thought would be best suited to the material. Not very many undercuts, quite round, quite bulky, things that would be easy to remove from a very fragile mold.
These came out pretty good.
I gave these new molds the same treatment that I did with the Big Toad. I painted in the details, gave them a tap, tried to get in all the cracks and crevices, get as many air bubbles as I could out. And I think the result is really, really great. I think these would be a perfect fit on any tabletop. Some of the models do have some flaws, but they're easily fixed, easily patched, easily sanded away. And I've used plaster in models that have stood the test of time and I'm very, very proud of. You probably just want to prime them pretty well before you paint them.
I've moved the whole casting operation over here because what I'm doing now is seeing how many casts I can get from each Alginate mold. I'm very happy with the casts that are coming out. I just want to know how many I can get. And even on the second generation, we're starting to get some considerable flaws. In my hands are two models, one sculpted by my wonderful partner Rachel, and the other sculpted by me. And I want to mold these in silicone. This is silicone to make molds out of. There's a lot of different brands, there's a lot of different types of silicone. Like more types than I can count that have different pot lives, curing times, viscosities, different ways of mixing them. I bought this one, Mold Max 29NV. The NV stands for no vacuum. You can get the equivalent of this by just looking for a low viscosity silicone.
Now, a problem I face as someone in country Australia is that what I will recommend to you as a good silicone might not be available to you at a reasonable price. Even filming this video, the silicone that I wanted to use for demonstration wasn't in stock. That's the nature of the beast. So the best thing you can do is call up your local molding and casting supplier and be like, hey, I want to make miniatures. I don't have a vacuum chamber. I don't have a pressure pot. I don't even have a digital scale. What would you recommend to me? And they'll probably be very, very helpful. In my experience, they've been incredible. And if that's kind of scary, just send them an email. When we pour the silicone, we want to pour it into the corner of the mold box. And that way the silicone will gently roll over the model and push out any air that might get caught on its own. You also want to pour nice and high in a big long string, and that will help any bubbles pop on the way down as well.
There's a little horn sticking out the top. We were so close. We were so close. Well, we're going to mix up more for this one anyway, so we'll just top this one off.
You might notice me adding a little bit of blue dye to the silicone, and the only purpose of that is for organization, because after you make a few molds, they all start looking the same after a while. So by making them different colors, you can keep track of them. And look at that, that's low viscosity silicone at work. All these tiny little bubbles rising to the top and popping on their own. And this will take about 6 hours to cure, so we'll come back in the morning.
Good morning. Okay. Beautiful. Excellent. I feel like I better do this little one first because my wonderful girlfriend sculpted it and she's home from work in like an hour. And it'd be great for her to pull the first cast of it. My friend Toon, he always taught me to clean things up as well when I was learning to mold and cast with him. Show some pride in your work. Okay, just gotta check and make sure there's no grubbly bits in there. We should just send it. I found with tin curing silicones, if you put the mold in front of a heater or at a very low heat in the oven, it will help off-gas any leftover chemicals in the molds, and then you won't have any problems casting with them. In the meantime, we have to shake up our resin. It's normally better to do this the day before, but I forgot, so I'm going to assume that you probably will too. Because we're not using a pressure pot, we have to let this sit, so all the bubbles will sort of come to the top. Picking the right resin can be kind of tricky. I use this resin because it's got a low viscosity, which means less bubbles, and it's also got a pot life about 7 minutes, so there's enough time for the bubbles to rise to the top. There's enough time to... You'll see. Because I'm only using small quantities of this at a time, I normally cut like a little pouring spout and a little air intake, rather than cut off the whole thing. You should label these part A, part B, so you can reuse them. Oh, hi. Okay. Now we use a toothpick to get in the bottom of all the little horns and stuff to try to get bubbles out. The rest can go into mine. Oh. Hey, that's pretty good. That's getting there. This may be workable. This next cast, we're going to let the shaken up resin sit even longer, and we're going to gently stir the resin because we have a lot of working time, and we're going to be very cautious about how we pour it in. Maybe use a skewer. Maybe like roll it around. We're getting bubbles in the horns here. I'm having trouble getting resin all the way into the very bottom, all the way to the tip of the horns without bubbles. So, we're going to cut this in half. Not all the way.
When cutting silicone, you want to use a brand new knife blade, and you want to do lots of little cuts where you want to go, rather than one big continuous cut.
So, I've cut this in half. If this is the inside of the mold, I've cut all the way along here, and then cut up here, and then down here, and along the top of those horns, and then back down again. And so, horn here, horn here, horn here. These are all accessible now. and we can make sure that we can get resin to the very bottom of them. Molding and casting miniatures is all problem solving, and you're going to learn so much as you start going. But just remember, if your models are filled with bubbles, it's still fantastic. Like, it's still a fantastic accomplishment, and anytime I'm given a model that someone has made, no matter if it's filled with bubbles or not, I cherish it and love it, and I'm very excited to kit bash with it, paint it up, use it in my games. So just give it a go.
So you're going to put on a mask as well. Put on a rubber band. Roll it around.
Man, I reckon this is gonna be the one. I can feel it. Ah, beautiful. Yeah, now we're cooking. That. Oh man, that's fun. That's really. Okay, cool. No pressure pot. No vacuum chamber. Silicone and resin.
Ooh, pretty.
And yours is here.
Wait, what are they?
They're test ones.
Do I get to demold it?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
You just, crack the sides and then push it down. I don't know how well it will turn out, but we'll see. Yeah, go for it. You can't break it.
You sure?
Yep.
Ooh. That looks really good.
Yeah, nice. Well, that one's yours.
So how did the Alginate and plaster experiment go? Well, the more complicated models, I got about 2.5 casts with them before I started encountering 2 big problems to solve. Some simpler models, I got about 4. And the very simple, very shallow shapes, I reckon I could probably get like 6 casts out of an Alginate mold for these if I wanted to keep going. Let's quickly talk miniature design. Design your miniatures big and chunky. Round, solid surfaces will make your life so much easier. I sculpted this demon specifically on a throne because it would make it easier to cast. There's no holes in this model, it's just one solid block. You can apply the same logic to a more traditional miniature too. This is from Wilhelm Miniatures in a more classic 28mm style. These are from my friend Paige from PMC Illustrations. These are all made without a pressure pot, cast in beautiful colors, which is something you might want to consider. This is the Woolly Mama from Nerdcraft HQ, even beautifully packaged. This is from an open mold, no special equipment. It looks so good. A great example of what you can do. I truly have no allegiance to any sculpting material. I'll try it all. I enjoy using everything, and every single material, because they're all different, unlocks something different in my brain. But the models I sculpted in this video, I used plasticine for. It's a reusable material and it's very, very cheap, but it will get destroyed when it's coming out of the molds because you can't bake this. This is going to stay a gelatinous, I don't know if that's the right word, material forever. It's never going to be hard. I learned sculpting with Super Sculpey, and I think that's the easiest experience you can have. It's a little bit pricey though. Epoxies of all sorts are very difficult to learn with because they cure fast, but once you start using them, you'll learn to love them. My friend Tanner, he sculpts in Milliput and he's a master. How about tools? Sculpting tools are a very personal thing, but these two are the ones I gravitate towards the most, and these just came from a cheap dentistry tool set. You might instinctively find yourself trying to smooth things over with your finger. That's because it's a nice soft surface to delicately push things around. Silicone sculpting tools are very expensive, so I found myself using this a lot. This is a diamond file, but it's got a silicone grip on it, and that's quite soft, and I use this to smooth out surfaces.
See, like a little tiny baby finger, nice and soft, smooth things out, poke things around. Sometimes I'll also use this tool, which is good for scraping and carving, but it's only really useful for plasticine. And I have an assortment of homemade sculpting tools, and when I have leftover material, I'll make one of these. This is great for adding texture and roughness. So this is the part of the video where I wanted to teach you how to sculpt. And the problem is that I don't really know. In all truth, I kind of just make it up. I don't really know anatomy. I can't really sculpt what I see. I can't really sculpt what I can draw. I just push putty around until it feels good, until it feels aesthetic to my eye. I think the only lesson I can give you in regards to sculpting is just to give it a go. Because truly, the thing that will make you confident at sculpting is just understanding the material that you're working with. It sounds so bizarre. But as soon as you start working out the limitations of your materials, what happens when you push and pull it, when you scrape it, when you cut it, when you score it, how it holds detail, what happens if you put isopropyl alcohol on it, what about heat, what if you put it in the freezer? When you experiment, you'll feel so confident. My goal isn't to make something good or be the best. It's always just to make something, because I think that's what it's all about. I think making things is a way to celebrate being alive. And when I get to go to incredible meetups with incredible people and trade incredible miniatures and hear incredible stories, that's my chance to celebrate with other people too. Celebrate what they've accomplished, what they want to do. Celebrate having a common interest with people I've never met or would never meet for any other reason. That's why I think DIY is pretty bloody cool. This exercise is what made sculpting click for me. You make a vague mushroom shape, and then, without adding or removing material, you have to find a skull. I'm using green stuff for this, which is an epoxy. It has a curing time, and from start to finish, the properties are changing. It starts out very soft, and by the end it's very hard but kind of elasticy. And your brain, your motions, they have to keep adapting as it's curing. And you might be starting with green stuff, because that's where a lot of people start. And I think this is the perfect exercise. Good luck. And if you find the skull pretty fast, change its expression. Make it angry, make it grumpy, make it happy, make it sad. Keep going until you can't push the putty anymore.
You should make your own miniatures. Make them big, make them kind of chunky, make monsters, use found objects, make something inspired by something else, or maybe something abstract. You can even use your own body parts. Maybe fill your model with something that doesn't really belong. Okay, maybe that's too far. Look, I made one that glows in the dark. Actually, I've made a lot of things that glow in the dark now.
Whoa.
Miniature making is fun and experimental. Go nuts, go crazy. Make what you want to make and share it. That's the whole point. In the next episode of this series, we're going to cast something a little bit more complicated. This has a separate head, it's got a little hole in it, and we're going to do it without any equipment. Fingers crossed, I have some ideas. All right, bye.